The CEO of Parker Tower never paid attention to the cafe staff downstairs until the day he saw a little girl with sparkling eyes and a familiar pendant around her neck. The same pendant he had placed around another woman's neck 15 years ago, before they said goodbye forever. Before we start, leave a comment telling us what city you're listening from. And don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Hearth for more incredible stories. Kate Rodriguez wiped down the espresso machine for the third time that morning, her movements quick and efficient despite the chaos swirling in her mind. The babysitter had canceled at the last minute, leaving her with an impossible choice: miss work and risk losing her job, or bring 6-year-old Sophie to Manhattan Brew and hope nobody noticed. She glanced over at her daughter, who was currently charming the security guards with her gap-toothed grin and endless questions about their walkie-talkies. Sophie had always been like that, a tiny tornado of curiosity and joy who could make friends with anyone in minutes. "Mommy, can I draw pictures for the customers?" Sophie bounced over to the counter, her dark curls bobbing with each step. "Stay close to me, sweetheart." Kate adjusted the silver pendant around her daughter's neck. It was the only valuable thing she owned, and the only piece of her past she hadn't been able to throw away. "Stay close to me, sweetheart," Kate replied, adjusting the silver pendant around her daughter's neck. It was the only valuable thing she owned, and the only piece of her past she hadn't been able to throw away. And remember, this is Mommy's workplace, so we need to be on our best behavior. The morning rush was in full swing when Daniel Parker stepped into the elevator of his own building. The CEO of Parker & Co. rarely visited the ground floor, preferring to stay in his corner office 47 floors above the city's noise. But this morning, he dropped his Mont Blanc pen in the lobby and needed to retrieve it before his meeting with Japanese investors. As he bent down to pick up the pen, a small voice made him look up. "Hi there," Sophie said, appearing beside him with the fearlessness only children possess. "Are you important? You look important." Daniel found himself smiling despite his hurry. The little girl had striking brown eyes and an infectious grin that reminded him of someone. But it was the pendant around her neck that made his breath catch. A small silver circle with an intricate engraving, impossible to mistake because he'd chosen it himself 15 years ago. "Where did you get that necklace?" The question came out sharper than intended. Sophie touched the pendant protectively. "Mommy gave it to me. She said it was from someone very special." Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs as memories flooded back. A summer in Santa Monica, a young woman with laughing eyes and wild dreams, and the last night before he left for business school when he'd fastened this very pendant around her neck and promised to call every day. He never did call. Life, ambition, and fear had built walls between them that seemed impossible to cross. "Sophie!" Kate's voice cut through his reverie. She looked up to see her hurrying toward them, her face flushed with embarrassment. She wore the navy blue uniform of Manhattan Brew, her brown hair pulled back in a messy bun. For a moment, the world tilted on its axis. Kate. His Kate. 15 years older, even more beautiful, and he realized, instantly terrified. "I'm so sorry," she said, reaching for Sophie. Her stomach tightened. This was not the place, not the time, and Sophie could never know. Not yet. She wandered off. "Sophie, we don't bother the customers." "He's not a customer, Mommy," Sophie protested. "He lives in the building, don't you?" Yes," Daniel managed, still staring at Kate. "I work upstairs." Kate's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She knew exactly who he was, but her voice was steady. "Well, Mr. Parker," he said quietly. "Daniel Parker." If he expected recognition, he was disappointed. Kate simply nodded politely and tugged Sophie away. "Come on, sweetheart, let's get back to work." But Sophie had other plans. As they walked toward the cafe, she called back over her shoulder, "Bye, Mr. Daniel.
Maybe you can come have coffee with us sometime." Daniel stood frozen in the marble lobby, watching them disappear behind the glass doors. Through the windows, he could see Kate moving quickly behind the counter, her movements sharp with controlled tension. And there was Sophie, now sitting at a corner table with paper and crayons, completely oblivious to the earthquake she'd just caused. For the next 3 days, Daniel found himself inventing reasons to visit the ground floor. He told himself it was curiosity, but in truth, guilt had been gnawing at him ever since he saw that pendant and the little girl wearing it. On Wednesday, he finally worked up the courage to order something. "Good morning," he said, approaching the counter during the mid-morning lull. "Could I get a large Americano?" Kate looked up from the espresso machine, her expression professionally neutral. "Size?" "Large," he repeated, then added softly, "It's good to see you, Kate." Her hands stilled for just a moment before she resumed her work. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" The lie hit him like a physical blow, but before he could respond, Sophie came running over with a drawing in her hands. "Mr. Daniel, look what I drew for you!" The paper showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. One tall figure in a suit, one smaller figure with long hair, and one tiny figure with curly hair and a circle around its neck. "That's very beautiful," Daniel said, kneeling down. "Is this your family?" "It's us," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "You, me, and Mommy. See, I drew your necklace, too." Kate's coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. The sound echoed through the cafe like a gunshot, and several customers looked over with concern. "Sophie," Kate's voice was strained as she knelt to clean up the mess. "We've talked about this. Mr. Parker is just a customer." But Sophie was already tugging on Daniel's sleeve. "Mr. Daniel, do you want to see my other drawings? I made one of Mommy when she was young. She had really long hair and—" "Sophie, that's enough." Kate stood up, her face pale but her voice firm. "Go sit at your table and color quietly." As Sophie returned to her corner, Kate finally met Daniel's eyes. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw the pain and fear underneath. "Your coffee," she said, sliding the cup across the counter. "That'll be $3.50. Daniel placed a $10 bill on the counter and didn't wait for change. As he turned to leave, Sophie's voice rang out again. "Mr. Daniel, wait! You forgot your drawing!" He turned back to see her running toward him, her artwork fluttering in her small hands. Pressing it into his palm, she leaned closer. "Mrs. says my daddy couldn't be here when I was little, but maybe he's just been looking for us all this time. Do you think that's possible?" Daniel's throat tightened as he looked at the drawing again. 3 figures, holding hands, a family that existed only in a 6-year-old's imagination. "I think," he said carefully, "that sometimes people find their way back when they're meant to." Kate watched from behind the counter, her pulse still racing. She'd built an entire life on the hope that this moment would never come. What happens when Daniel discovers the truth about Sophie's father, and why is Kate so determined to keep their past buried? Subscribe to Hidden Hearth and hit the bell icon to find out what happens next in this incredible story of second chances and hidden truths.